Did you know that 90% of business owners do not have a written marketing plan? As women of faith in business, scripture instructs us to write the vision and make it plain. So I'm giving you an invitation to write your marketing plan and make it plain by discovering two powerful ways to successfully plan your marketing so you can attract your ideal clients and prosper in your God given purpose. Go to nadinemullings.com/power. That's nadinemullings.com/power to get started on your marketing plan so you can start attracting your ideal clients in the marketplace. Welcome to the Women Faith Plus Business Podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Mullings. I'm an author, speaker, and podcast host, and I believe in the importance of women of faith stepping up, shining in their lane, and sharing their God-given message so they can have the impact, income, and influence they were born to make. Join me this season to discover how women of faith in business are using podcasts as their platform to share their mission-driven message. And be sure to join the Women Faith Plus Business community by going to nadinemullings.com/community. That's nadinemullings.com/community. See you in the powerful community of women of faith in business, and enjoy this episode of the Women Faith Plus Business Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Women Faith Plus Business Podcast. I have a brand new guest with us today, someone that we're meeting for the first time. So I love when we get to have these conversations with a new person that's in my network. But it's someone that I was connected with. What's actually through an outreach. I think it's always good to talk about the backstories of how you connect with your podcast guests. And this is a good example of outreach working, right? So her outreach, representative reached out to me and pitched her for the podcast. And I think I was on season 10 at the time. Wasn't accepting guests for season 10, but I kept her name on the list and reached back out when it came to season 11. And I was so excited that she was available, willing, and wanting to be on the podcast for season 11. It is Andee Hart. So welcome to the show, Andee Hart. And she is the host of She Sells Differently podcast. So I love that title. She sells differently. We all know as women, we're different, right? But She Sells Differently really is going into those stories, and we're going to learn more about it, of how she sells differently. So welcome to the podcast, Andee.
Thanks for having me. What a blessing to be here. I'm so excited.
Awesome. So let's learn a little bit more about Andee, her official bio. Andee Hart is an energetic entrepreneur, sales strategist, mentor, and host of the podcast She Sells Differently. While working as a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company, Andee started a passion project. I love passion projects, right? Her passion project was Heart Design Co., a candle making in her home kitchen. That's awesome. What started as a side hustle with her candles is a handful of local boutiques quickly blossomed into a wildly successful wholesale business and storefront. That's awesome. Within a year, Andee was able to transition from her corporate career to full-time entrepreneurship due to her tenacity. All need tenacity, engaging in social media presence, and counter-cultural strategies. Now, I love that. So important as Christians, as women of faith, as believers, to be countercultural. So I love her countercultural strategies that enable her businesses to thrive. Love that word, because that's my word for 2025. Thrive in competitive markets. Andee's mission is to empower women to overcome sales anxiety and grow their businesses with integrity, grace, and humility. Welcome to the show again, Andee.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk about all things faith in business. It's so important. It's such an important topic. And so I'm excited to dive in.
Awesome. And I love in your bio that you talk about helping women when it comes specifically to sales. And I wanted to kind of, before we even jump into the topic for this season, which is women of faith who are podcasters, talk a little bit about why sales is such a struggle, particularly for women. And maybe we can even talk about women of faith, because I think honestly, there's another level of struggle with a woman of faith versus
Yes.
a woman in the world, right, who's not necessarily a believer. So I'd love to start our conversation off with figuring out why is sales such a big issue with women?
Yeah. Well, so let's first talk about why it's a struggle with us as women. And first off, the reality is we're selling every day. Whether you realize it or not, if you're a mom and you're trying to convince your kids to eat their vegetables at the dinner table, you're trying to sell them on the fact that their vegetables are healthy for them and beneficial and nutritious for them. So, even in the little everyday things, whether you realize it or not, you are selling. Selling is serving, because that's serving your children. Selling is influencing. And so the reality is that we have all been the recipient of selling that was manipulative, selling that was actually, we received something that didn't live up to the expectations that we were sold. And so, something that my pastor says often, he says, disappointment is unmet expectations. And so, that really is what happens and why sales gets a bad reputation, because we've all had those experiences where we were sold certain expectations. And then after we made the exchange and we bought into it, what was delivered did not live up to the expectations. And so that was the disappointment. And so in our minds as women, we are like, we never want to do that to people. We never want to be that person that sells people on something and we don't deliver. And it's a subconscious thing because we truly don't, we we won't do that. We don't intend to do that. But in our minds, we're thinking we do not want to be those slimy salespeople that are just selling, selling, selling. But the reality is when you're selling with integrity and with purpose and with service, you're actually doing people a favor because you are selling things that provide value to them. And when you do it with integrity, you live up to what you are selling them. You live up to the expectations and you follow through with what you sell, right? So, following up on the second part of that question, though, women of faith, even more, I think we are taught all throughout the Bible to serve, to be generous. And so, what we do as women of faith is we confuse that so often with we just have to give away things and we shouldn't make a profit. And so I want to claim right here that there is a difference here. And yes, we should be generous with our time and our gifts, but I also want to challenge every woman of faith that God has given you good gifts to also provide for your family. And you can look no further than even Proverbs 31. And so often we look at that as a wife of noble character, but just look in that, if you actually read Proverbs 31, she is providing fabric to the merchant. She is selling her goods and she is spinning cloth and literally selling her goods to come back and provide for her family. So you see even, examples in scripture of a woman that has a gift and she is using those gifts to sell and make money. So when you do these things that the Lord has given you with intention, excellence, and purpose, you're actually glorifying the Lord. So it's there's just a difference there in how you approach them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So many good nuggets you dropped just in explaining that. I think the
Yeah.
first good nugget that really stood out for me was we sell every day, right? And I love the example that you gave about your children selling them on eating their vegetables. I
Yeah.
just recently acquired a bonus son. So I have a son, and in the morning, and I'm talking to him about drinking his orange juice. And why we drink orange juice is because of vitamin C. And vitamin
Hmm.
C is good for us and makes us healthy. So it's that whole story that I go through every
Yes.
morning is selling him on the idea of why drinking vitamin C is a valuable thing for him, right? And he has no problem selling us on things that he wants and needs, right? Right? He needs Roblox money for the game Roblox, right? So I really think that that is a great analogy or a great way to think about sales because we're doing it every day. Your children
Hmm.
are doing it to you. You're doing it to your children. It's just the way that we communicate in order to get something across
Yeah.
and to make something valuable. That really is, like you said, sales is about influence. It really is about serving and influence. So I love that you use that example. And I agree with you that, as women of faith, it is, we come from this humble generosity, serving, kind of, uh, background, I guess I want to call
Hmm.
it, where it gives it a higher level of difficulty to sell, on a regular in the marketplace because you're coming from wanting to just serve and give and be generous. But in order to really show up in the best way in the marketplace is to put a value on it. When people
Hmm.
are spending money, then that way they are actually investing and committing more into the value that they want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love how you shared about sales in general and of course the difference between women and women of faith when it comes to selling. And Proverbs 31 is the best example for us
Yeah.
as Christian women and women of faith of a woman who was selling and successful and is an example for all of us. So I love that you brought Proverbs 31 woman up. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. So tell us a little bit about your actual podcast, because this season we're featuring women of faith in business who are hosting podcasts. And obviously you have a podcast. She
Hmm.
sells differently. So tell us a little bit more about the backstory. Why did you decide to start a podcast? What was your inspiration? So tell us a little bit more about She Sells Differently podcast.
Yes. So I started the podcast because I spent over 17 years in executive sales and leadership. I worked for two Fortune 500 technology companies. I kind of stumbled into sales actually just on a fluke, really. But I ended up loving sales. And I think that that was really just a gift from the Lord because He showed me like I mentioned earlier, that you can be good at sales and learn to serve the Lord through selling as a service, right? But in over 17 years of sales, I went through so many sales trainings and I saw so many people sell in a way that was how the world tells you to sell, right? And I'm just to give you several examples, and you'll hear these all the time if you just tune into different, Facebook ads. You'll see sale people that have sales trainings and they're selling ads for them and they're getting into their multi-million dollar helicopters and planes and their amazing car. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm not degrading that, but they're teaching you how to always be closing and how to and their tactics are they just seem very manipulative and self-serving. And to me, selling, if I want to model the ultimate salesperson, that was Christ. And the way that he sold his message was so countercultural to what the world teaches us to sell. And that has worked far beyond what any modern day sales training has done for me. Now, I am not the perfect salesperson. I think one of the best, my favorite things about being in sales is that you're constantly learning. It truly is an art form. But some of the things that I love and why I created the She Sells Differently podcast is that you can lean into who God created you to be and sell in a way that is authentic to who you are and not try to be the person next to you and not
Yep.
fall for all of those cultural sales tactics. And so that is really why I created the podcast to teach faith driven sales tactics and to help women of faith grow their business.
I love that. I love that so much. First of all, I think you're the only person I've had on the entire podcast. Season 11, we're recording right now. So in it's 11 seasons of the podcast, I don't think I've ever had someone say, I love sales. So you're like the first one on the podcast to say, I love sales. Most of the
Yeah,
time, there's a history with sales that people have. But the way that you explain it is true. It's just about serving, right? It's about serving at that level and really giving people value. That's all sales really is. And I think the reason why most people don't necessarily say, I love sales is exactly what you said. It seems a little manipulative, right?
hmm,
People are used to being manipulated in sales.
yeah,
And I love the way that you describe manipulating as self-serving. So if someone is trying to sell you something, but the way that they're sharing it with you is a way that they want you to buy it, but the reason behind it is mainly self-serving. It's not really necessarily to give you value or to give you a solution, but hey, I need a paycheck, so let me just tell her what I need to
hmm,
tell her, so she can buy the car and drive. Because we always think of used car salesmen, right? Buy the car
right,
and drive off of the lot. So I'm going to tell her all these great things, but the expectation, like you said, but before that was said about this car and what happens when you drive off the lot are two different things. So that's what gives us a really bad taste about sales. But it is just being authentic and truly being authentic to yourself and selling in that way. So I love that you explain it that way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when you decided to start She Sells Differently podcast, did you have a vision of what the podcast could do besides, explaining to people how they can sell? Was there a certain vision that you had for the podcast, or what was your overall thought about the podcast when you launched it? What was the vision for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that this has, as I have learned and evolved my business, this is something that I am, my vision for my podcast is evolving as well, because I do seek to use it as a sales and a marketing tool as well for my business, something to promote what I do as a sales strategist for my business. Because what better way for people to understand who I am, the services that I provide, than to get a glimpse from it, through my podcast. So that is something that I have always sought to do, but I have leaned a little bit more into as I have gone along as well. And so I have never really sought to monetize my podcast. I'm kind of exploring that a little bit as what that looks like. But that's not ever been like first and foremost a vision. It's really just been getting my name, who I am, what I do out there. And I have been, I say, fairly good about tracking where my traffic comes from. And it's been amazing how many people have found me through my podcast. And so don't ever, don't underestimate the reach that you can have of people just, driving their kids to school or, going for a run and they're listening to what you have to say and they may grab a lead magnet from your episode and you are nurturing them. It may be a year later, but they may become a customer through your podcast. And so that's really ultimately the goal, because we are here to make a living, right? As we talk about sales, but it's to provide value. My podcast is to simply to provide value for my listeners. And they're not all going to become a customer. They're not all my customer, and that's okay. That's okay. But just to provide value for them, and that's really has been the foundational vision all along.
Yeah, I love that. So true. So I'm hearing that the main thing is really value. As long as you're
Yeah.
providing value on your podcast, you're actually fulfilling that vision that you have of the
Yeah.
podcast. But there is a desire, of course, for that value to also lead to potentially a lead for your business, right? That will lead to
Yeah.
a client eventually, having that in there. So there is a potential monetization part to it where you can actually make some money through the value that you provide through the podcast. So I definitely see that. And I definitely hear that because I think a lot of us podcasters struggle in that area of profit and monetization because we go in it wanting to provide the value. You know, we go in it wanting to make a difference for those who listen to each
Hmm.
episode. But you do have to think strategically.
Yes.
How is this helping my business? How is this making sure that somebody takes that extra step and takes that download or takes that extra step to sign up for your class or your workshop or your webinar, whatever the case may be. So really thinking through and having a strategy around how you not only just provide value, but it also monetizes in some way, shape, or form is an important
Yeah.
thing to think about when you're podcasting for sure.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, at the end of the day, you are in business, and this goes back to sales, but you are in business not just to have a fun hobby. You're in business to make money.
Mm,
And this goes back to what I was saying. The Lord has given you a gift. And
yep.
so you steward it well. And so
Yes.
I'm not spending time on my podcast just to have a fun hobby. I do want it, and I think this is important for, everyone that's considering a podcast. I do want it to be at the end of the day, a revenue driver or a traffic driver,
Yeah.
from a sales funnel perspective to my business. And like I said, is everyone that listens to my podcast going to be a customer? No, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I do want to have, a lead generation. It is a lead generation for my business, and that has to be done strategically, and it can be done through, different ways. And those are different things that I'm kind of exploring with now of like, what is the best way to drive traffic from my podcast into my business?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you have to play around with it too. Because how
Yeah.
long have you been podcasting now? How
Uh,
long?
about a year and a half.
A year
Yeah.
and a half. Yeah. So, each year or each season, you kind of tweak things,
Yeah.
test things for sure. But I agree with you that it's been one of the best sources of traffic for my
Yeah.
website. I think that's one of the first tips that I always tell people is make sure that you're directing traffic to your website. Because a lot of times people will direct them to iTunes or Spotify or wherever, but you have more of a probability of converting people and making leads when you're directing them to listen to your podcast episode on your website, right? Because then they can be
Mm,
curious and like, well, let me click here on her website or let me
yeah.
click there. So I love that you talked about, it generating traffic to your website. And I think it's the biggest platform or way to reach a global audience. That's another thing that when you look at your stats for your podcast, like for me, I look at the stats for my podcast and I see countries like, I don't even know what country is that, right? Because
Right?
someone in that country listened to an episode. So reach is another thing that really podcasting is outstanding in helping you really spread your God-given message to the world, right?
Yes.
We're directed to spread the gospel to the world, and this is one way that we can do it through our podcast platform. Don't you agree?
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I'd love for you to share if someone listened to one episode, or maybe they binge listened and they listened to several episodes of your podcast. If there's one thing that you desire for them to take away from your podcast, it could be one word, it could be a phrase, it could be a thought. what would be that one thing that you desire every listener to take away from listening to your podcast, She Sells Differently?
Such a great question. So the phrase that I have really been leaning into is, and I've already mentioned it, I think here on this podcast is um, viewing selling as a service,
Mm-hmm.
because we have just heard it, and it subconsciously from our experiences, it's been ingrained that sell selling feels slimy, and so when we are
Mm-hmm.
selling, if we really change that mindset when we're selling our products, our services, if we lean into it and we start viewing selling as serving other people. And I say this all the time on my podcast. If you have a product or a service that provides value to other people,
Mm-hmm.
you actually owe it. You owe it to others to share about it.
Yeah.
So you think about that. If the Lord has given you a gift, you owe it to share it with other people. You owe it to that stewarding it well.
Yes. Yeah. So
And
true. Go ahead.
so that is what I want people to take away, that mindset shift, that is reframing selling as serving and providing
Mm,
value to others. And that doesn't mean that you have to shove it in their face, not take no for an answer, overcome every objection. No, just share it. Authentically
yeah.
share it with them like you would a friend. So that mindset shift is what I really aim to educate people on.
Yeah, and that honestly is such a powerful mindset shift because as I said, most people have that negative view of
Yes.
sales. So if you can just reframe and you could just shift to this is simply serving. This is simply serving, and it's
Yeah.
important for us to serve with the gifts that God has given us. So I love that that main core message that people get from listening to your podcast is selling is a service. It's serving people. We want to serve people well. We want to be a good steward of the giftings that God
Yes.
has given us. It also reminds me of the parable of the talents, right? The
Yeah.
one person buried their talent, buried what God gave them. They never served, they never sold, so it could be multiplied, right? And God was so disappointed in that person. So God would be disappointed in us if we're burying our gifting, burying our talent because we don't want to serve
Yeah.
the people that God has us out there to serve. So I love that selling is a service that we can
I
do.
feel like you just gave me like a great idea for a whole podcast episode. So
Yes,
thank
I
you.
love
Thank you.
it. You
I think
are
I'm going to
so
do a whole
welcome.
episode on that parable because I love that.
Yes, you have to. You have to, because as I hear my guests, God just always drops examples or
Yeah.
things in my spirit. And as you were speaking, that example just dropped in my spirit strong. And he's like, it's the same thing. It's the
I
same
love
exact thing.
that.
And that's why it's so important for us to be good stewards of what God has given us and how do you multiply? You multiply by selling, then you get more and you get more, right? That's
So
multiplication.
true.
So
Thank you
true.
for
So
that.
true. Yeah, you are so welcome. So that's awesome. And I love that people get that message from your podcast. Now, tell us a little bit more about how people can connect with you if they want to work with you and if you want to share on a deeper level on how you help and the work that you do in the world, and then how people can actually connect with you and work with you for the work that you do
Yes.
in the world.
Thank you for asking. So you can find me at andeehart.com, and my name is spelled a little different. Thank you to my mom and dad for this. It's Andee, Andee Hart, HART.com. I have a free Facebook group. It's She Sells Differently. You can just search that on Facebook and join. I put free sales tips out there and free trainings on there. I primarily work with product makers and
Ah,
helping them grow their product businesses. And the reason I do that is because when I started my entrepreneur journey, I started it with a candle company. And so I've just really leaned into the product industry. And so I
mhm.
have a lot of different courses and resources on my website that you can find to help you grow your product business. And I do have a free sales tools that will help you whether you sell products or services. These are tried and tested, proven sales tools that I love. That I use a lot of them myself. And so feel free to grab that if you are looking for helpful sales and marketing tools.
Definitely. So go ahead and check out her website, download those tools, connect with her on social media, do all the things to be connected with Andee Hart. I appreciate you so much for being a guest on this season of the Women, Faith Plus Business podcast. Did you know that 90% of business owners do not have a written marketing plan? As women of faith in business, scripture instructs us to write the vision and make it plain. So I'm giving you an invitation to write your marketing plan and make it plain by discovering 2 powerful ways to successfully plan your marketing so you can attract your ideal clients and prosper in your God-given purpose. Go to nadinemullings.com/power. That's nadinemullings.com/power to get started on your marketing plan so you can start attracting your ideal clients in the marketplace. Thank you for listening to the Women, Faith Plus Business podcast. I hope this episode has been insightful and inspiring and has offered you an opportunity to take action to transform your life and your business. Wherever you are listening, be sure to rate and review the podcast and also subscribe to get the next episode right in your inbox by going to womenfaithandbusiness.com to join our email list.